So the one question that we want to talk about today or address is, when should AI be allowed to act automatically? And then when should a human actually be interacting or overseeing what happens? This is extremely important. Specifically, the example is a city in California where they were using this specific software to read license plates. And over 70% of the time, this software was actually using AI, and it was reading the wrong numbers on the license plates, and it was targeting the people that were driving the vehicles and flagging them as stolen and such. And hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of your AI Tech Tuesdays. I'm Crystal Gonzalez, one of your hosts, here with Yamil, our other host.
Hi, good morning and welcome.
So today we are going to be talking about some security concerns and some recent news that we have found that we thought you guys would all like to hear. We were on camera, or we were actually off camera, talking about some things I had read. And I was like, oh my gosh, Emil, I think this is super important that we share this, because I don't know if you guys will see the article or not, but I just wanted to go over the importance of the security risks that can come, and also the problems that can happen when AI goes rogue. Right, Emil?
Absolutely. Very timely information. I mean, the more we get into this, the more we're going to discover that there are things we need to pay attention to very closely, so we don't hurt ourselves or others.
We've been having all these episodes about all the excitement in AI and all these tools and everything, but we think it's just as much important to talk about some things that are concerning with AI and some things that we can do to protect ourselves and protect our companies from lawsuits or things that could happen that could bring us, be detrimental, right?
Exactly. And protect our clients as we do work for them. This is not an exact science. This is a new thing. So we're all learning as we go along. But the important thing to remember is that because it is new, you really have to pay close attention. And if you're not sure about something, verify. Always verify. Don't just blindly give approvals or permissions to something that you don't know what it's going to do with it.
So the one question that we want to talk about today or address is, when should AI be allowed to act automatically? And then when should a human actually be interacting or overseeing what happens? This is extremely important. Specifically, the example is a city in California where they were using this specific software to read license plates. And over 70% of the time, this software was actually using AI, and it was reading the wrong numbers on the license plates, and it was targeting the people that were driving the vehicles and flagging them as stolen and such. And so that could be a very scary thing to go through as just a regular citizen out there, to be actually pulled over at gunpoint, because that's usually what happens when a vehicle is flagged as stolen. And it was reading the numbers wrong. And it was crazy because they actually admitted that they knew for a long time that it was reading wrong.
And they kept on doing it.
For some reason it kept going. If you read the article actually is on Business Insider under the AI section about the California city, and you can go look it up. It's a pretty new article, but it's just crazy that these things that we don't know but that is happening. And now the city was using it, and it's targeted the citizens. Crazy. So we definitely need to be careful.
I mean, that's one way to get yourself sued, especially if Discovery discovers that you knew, that it wasn't a known fact. Then you're going to be held liable more than likely, because you didn't stop it.
Yeah. And then there was another article we were talking about as well that just came out that was talking about how it was the Claude, right? Where an article about Claude, I think it was saying how Claude was doing a cybersecurity check and testing. And even though they had thought that this system was set up to it wasn't connected to the internet, and they were just doing testing, it wasn't going to go rogue. It actually did. It actually went into 3 companies' databases and actually exited the environment. And so that is actually something we all need to be careful about as business owners,
definitely.
But when we were talking about this, what are some things that we could recommend, Yamil, for business owners that have their assistants, that have their team using AI? I know personally, I've sent messages out and done training in my company. One, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want anybody in our company using the free version of anything AI. We always need to make sure we're monitoring it. But what other suggestions would you have to contribute
Well,
to our
one of the
community?
one of the things that I know for certain that most people do not pay attention to, and look, I have to consider myself in this pack sometimes. How often do you read terms and conditions of anything?
Yeah.
Let's be real. I mean, those things are long, right? And also when you're granting permissions to for apps to communicate inside systems or to communicate with each other, whenever you're granting permissions, it'll tell you like, this is what it wants access to. This is what it wants access to, blah, blah, blah. And, it doesn't mean it's going to use everything. And the permissions aren't necessarily like you're giving it access to like create and all this stuff. But the key thing to remember is you need to look at those things closely. And if something kind of gives you the blinking red light, then look into it because it's giving you that little, signal, hey, look at me for a reason. And if you think that there's something that you shouldn't do, or you're not sure if you should or shouldn't do or allow, give it a permission, then you should check, make sure that you fully understand what you're allowing it to do. A lot of these apps connect with one another. You'll have a rewrite permission, read, write, and I want to say this one more, but read and write for sure are permissions. You have to know what they do, what they're able to do if you allow it to write. Read isn't going to hurt anything necessarily for you, but could it get into places that maybe you don't want it to give access to? Maybe you want to limit it to a folder, not your entire contents of your entire life, right? Be very cognizant of what you are giving it, giving permissions to.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't, you're going to run into these things. And a lot of these issues that we're hearing about, I'd be willing to bet that a lot of them have to do with permissions. That somebody didn't see that something was getting more permission than it should have had, or that, it was accessing more information than it should have had,
Sure,
so you just,
totally.
if in doubt, verify.
No, for sure.
Always.
And if you think of it on a more corporate level, right? We have, or even bigger businesses, it's not just the business owner now or me and you, it's actually team members that we need to make sure. So it makes me think about this. If there's a problem in your company with hiring processes or discrimination or HR is handling certain things, what do? You make sure you have training in the company. So I would say company-wide training is extremely important because if for some reason a lawsuit did come, you want to be able to prove that you were training and working with your team and you were really working hard to try to ensure that you were keeping company and client data safe and that you've trained them how to use the systems. I would think about that. I mean, I haven't read anything about that, but just from, having been in that background, I would say this is probably super important. Are you implementing processes in your business to have a regular training workshops, training times where you're bringing all your employees in and you're actually training everybody in your organization on how to use AI properly, safely, and what not to do?
And not just that, but if there's ever a question or they're unsure of something, or maybe they're being asked for permissions for a particular app or something. It doesn't matter, really. It just depends how you're using it as to what it's going to ask for. But if an employee, member of your team, be sure that they understand that they can come to whoever it is that they should be coming to, and so they're not afraid to ask, because sometimes a culture of fear will also prevent people from actually asking questions because for fear of retribution, for fear of being punished, for fear of what have you. And sometimes people don't ask because they fear being, targeted, retaliated against.
Or criticize.
Yeah, criticize. Oh, well, you don't know anything. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So be sure you're fostering a culture of it's okay to ask if you don't know. Proper training obviously goes a long way, but if there is a question, you don't understand something, because this is all new. We're all learning.
Yeah.
People can tell you that they know, but they don't necessarily know. We're all learning. Everything's changing. My gosh, every time I log into ChatGPT or Claude, there's a little notice at the bottom, update to the latest version. This happens constantly.
Yep.
And you don't even know what's changed. It's just changed. So, it's good to get into the habit of, if you are not sure, you can't be 100% sure. Always ask and verify.
Very good. That's true. One last thing I was thinking before we wrap up, because we're almost done with the episode, but what I wanted to say is too, I think one thing that would be really important is that if employees are using AI, you have them sign an agreement saying that if I agree to do these things, I agree to keep the company safe, I agree to go, if I have questions, I can go, and you designate somebody in the company that they can go to for those questions.
Correct.
And you train them that way. This is the department that you go to with questions, and then hire the right people if you are having AI used in your company.
I was going to say that next. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But also is be sure that you just you understand what you're getting into, and hiring the right people is definitely a thing that is really important.
Yeah, not just the guy
important.
on the block that's saying, or the guy that you met at a networking meeting, because I'll tell you, they happen all the time. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm an AI guy. I'm an AI expert, or whoever it is. They're coming in and they're talking about AI, but what are they doing to keep themselves trained and up to date on the vulnerabilities with AI, the security with AI, and making sure they're using AI responsibly? You need to be constantly understanding the vulnerabilities with the safety of AI, understanding as things move forward, it's moving very fast. So if you got someone that's using AI, we can all use AI, guys. We can all open up a chat and chat with AI, but using it responsibly, using it safely, and making sure that we have the proper procedures and processes in place so that the company knows and the team knows who to go to for help.
Exactly. Right? And the other thing that I was actually kind of flew out of my head a minute ago was that when your employees are using AI, make sure that they are using your account, that the team account, because if they don't, then whatever you taught them it's not keeping your information safe, because they're going outside of that, team account or what have you, the login that you selected, that you have granted for them, and they're giving information to and it could be their free account, right? Which has different set of rules. And that's another thing we're going to talk about in a later episode, is how to properly set up, especially small businesses are not going to have enterprise versions of anything. They're going to be using like a team account on Claude or ChatGPT or what have you. And there's settings in the back that you should make sure that you're doing things properly and telling your team, you're allowed to use this, but only when you use your particular login for the company, That's another way of keeping information safe and secure.
Very good. Thank you so much, Amel. This is really helpful information, I think, for our viewers, what we've shared today. I know on our next episode, we want to talk a little bit about prompt engineering and the dangers in that, and some things that can happen from prompts being engineered. So I think that wraps it up for today's episode. What do you think?
Let's do it. Let's move on. Let's go on about our week, and then let's see you next week. And we'll talk more about the AI and how to keep it in check.
Very good. Thank you so much. And if you guys like our episode and you love our shows, please make sure to hit the subscribe button, share it with a friend. We'd love to have some followers. If you're interested in being a guest and you have some information that you'd like to share with us on an episode, we'd love for you to go to our AITechTuesdays.com. You can click on the link at the top that says become a guest, fill out the application. We'd love to bring you on. And so you can help us out here too. We can't all know AI, everything about AI. So we all can come in at a different angle. We'd love to have you contribute.
Exactly. So, and if you have questions, be sure to ask either on the notes of this channel or on any of our social channels where you happen to be catching our content. Please do. We read everything and we answer everything ourselves. So don't feel shy. Don't be shy, and go ahead and ask if you have a question.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you on the next episode, guys. Bye-bye.
See you next week. Bye.